Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Fan Battle Cast, where we debate about the matchups y'all pitched. And today we have a fun matchup. We have Ike from Fire Emblem and Smash Bros. I knew him from Smash Bros. Before Fire Emblem, but then I got better. And we have Siegfried from Soul Calibur. And today, I am your host, as always, Santi Sherm. And today, arguing for Ike is who you're arguing for, Kagurabachi.
Hello, I am the Kagurabachi. I am arguing for Ike. I will be using SMT scaling from Tokyo Mirage Sessions. I'm joking.
Is
I
this
was
your
about to say
first
I'm cooked.
is this your first debate that's not for an SMT thing?
No, I debated it for Tifa.
Oh yes, right, right,
Yeah,
right.
it was my first cast actually. It was Tifa, and I
Ah.
was actually debating against SMT.
You had to know your enemy. That was good strategy. Alright. And we also have today with us the lovely Wagon Works.
Hey, your girl is back. It's been too fucking long.
Always a pleasure to have you. And for the first time on cast, we have Subori, Sue, otherwise known as the Flawless Walrus. Say hi.
Hello, I'm going to be repping Soul Calibur and Siegfried Stoffen today.
All right. The last couple of matchups have been very unique, very gimmicky. I feel like this is kind of a return to form. This is very traditional death battle material we're working with right now, so this will be a good, fun time. It's a sword fight. I've brought swords. Um,
Yeah,
is there? So I'm not super familiar with these franchises. Is there more? What's the connection besides them having big swords?
to be honest, I couldn't tell you because I don't know Siegfried or Soul Calibur at all.
It's big swords, but it's also like special divine swords, um,
Mmm,
like MacGuffin swords, essentially.
MacGuffin swords. I'm
They've
sure they
both
also
been
have similar journeys. I just haven't played the game, so I can't testify.
kind of like they've both been mercenaries. Um,
Yeah,
Ike has mostly been fighting in the face of people who are doing some bad shit. Siegfried has been the one doing some bad shit.
technically
Yeah.
a hero versus villain matchup if you think about it.
Well, he gets better,
De-
doesn't he?
he does
Yeah,
get
he
better,
does.
yeah.
Yeah. He,
Depends on when.
it would be
I'm,
like
I'm
if,
just pointing it out.
based on the One Ring Soul Calibur connections, it would be like if Gollum turned out to be Frodo.
Damn.
All right.
Oh my god, yeah.
So I guess we can just kind of jump right into it. Which one of you, Cogger, you've done this a couple times. Would you like to be the first to have their
Uh,
60 seconds?
yeah, just 60 seconds explain who Ike is and all that.
Well, it'll be your 60 seconds to do whatever you want with.
Okay.
Let me pull up the timer.
Do I start?
You start. Whenever you start, I'll start the 60 seconds.
Okay. Just try to refresh myself. Okay. So, Ike, you know him from Smash Bros., but I know him from Fire Emblem. And let me tell you his origin. Basically, in a fantasy world, there were two people, Gwen and Elena, I believe. They were basically on the run because they had an artifact that belonged to a very evil king. They settled down somewhere, and after a couple of events, Ike and his sister was born. And Ike uh, grew up training and became a mercenary. And later on, he became the leader of the Grail mercenaries. And he's a badass. Like he killed a god. All right, he killed a.
That's a good final thing to end it on.
Yeah.
Has Siegfried killed a god?
Close enough, honestly.
Close enough. All right, whenever you start your 60 seconds, I'll start the timer.
Transcending history and the world, a tale of souls and swords eternally retold. Soul Calibur is a series in a very dark fantasy setting. There are various icons of power, artifacts, and things capable of bringing nations to heel. Siegfried's story is one that starts at somewhat humble beginnings, being born to a knight and instructed in the ways of swordsmanship. When his father was away on a mission, he fell in with a bunch of delinquents and started stealing things and resorting to banditry. This led to him raiding a military group, and he ended up killing his father. He convinced himself that someone else did it, heard about Soul Edge, and gassed his dad hard enough to think that only he could have been killed by such a weapon. So at that point, he basically went around killing everyone that he thought had Soul Edge until he ended up getting possessed by it himself. It took a long time for him to eventually break free of that control, and his battle with Soul Edge would last for the rest of his life.
Okay. So we've got two classic medieval warriors, it sounds like, that have a pretty impressive resume.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think the darkest part about Soul Calibur's fantasy is that we're never going to be seeing Soul Cal 7.
Yeah.
You will see Tekken 9.
The whole eternally retold thing only works as well as the money is flowing.
So, like, how do we want to start this? With these characters, what's, like, the most relevant thing to talk about?
Actually, I just want to bring up a few things.
All right.
I guess. First of all, could you bring up funny statement?
I will bring up the funny statement.
This is nothing related to Versus. This is just because I wanted to show you a funny statement I found in Fire Emblem.
You have two funny statements. Funny statement 1.
Yeah, I showed them both.
All right. Funny statement 1.
True!
All right.
So just on this, it seems that Ike takes the intelligence advantage. I don't know if I can come back from this one.
Yeah. There's a good self-awareness of... We would call this the wisdom W.
Yeah. And then funny statement 2.
Rock.
He's happy about that too. He's like, man, I got him.
Yeah, I know.
And the real fun part is he was probably literally killed for this joke.
You know what? Probably
Yeah.
He is red, and thus he must be killed as per Fire Emblem rules.
Oh yeah, that looks like a Dayan soldier right there.
I guess we can start with skill, I guess, if we want to start.
This is a sword fight, so
Sure.
the better swordsman makes sense.
Do you want to go first?
Sure, I could definitely go first. So Siegfried, as of various points in the story, is varying ages. He started off as a very well trained by a knight. By the time he was 15, he had been already training for most of his life. And then with his banditry and his time as Nightmare, he did pick up a ton of experience. Even when he sleeps, he is being consumed by Nightmare to continue killing people. Like when he sleeps, his body is just already up and murdering people. It's not until a couple years after that he breaks free of Nightmare's control and is able to even sleep without effectively training. I believe by the end of Soul Calibur 5, he's probably in his 40s. At which point he has basically been training his whole life, runs a mercenary group, and has just been going to town on all of the various cults, lizard men, and various forces that are in the Soul Calibur universe, most of which is just very skill and tactics focused. Like, a lot of people are trying to lay significant traps, and he's managed to survive all of it.
Does it count as experience if you're doing it when you're asleep?
Muscle memory, something.
Yeah,
getting your steps in.
That feels like you're buffing your resume. Like, yeah, I totally did all this stuff and remember it and all that.
I guess that maybe, but it sounds more like Nightmare was taking control of Siegfried.
It does, but it was still his body at the very least. So it's at least training in that sense. But more to the skill question would also, I guess, lump into technique. Now, you'd think with like gigantic sword that a character would be fairly slow, but if you've seen any of the gameplay from like the more recent Soul Caliburs and stuff like that, Siegfried's a quick guy. He's like swinging his sword around like practically like guts at some points, coincidentally based on the death battle, but he can swing it around with one hand. He can do multiple rotations in a second. And he can just kind of like go into swings with like no wind up or build up sometimes and catch people off guard. I know it's happened online a lot. But yeah, I think that pretty well goes into the experience and skill aspect.
Okay.
Okay. So how old is Ike?
How old is Ike? Ike, let me actually look up his age. Ike is 20. He was 17 in Path of Radiance, but as of Radiance Dawn, he is 20.
So it'd be reasonable to say that Siegfried takes the experience category.
How old is Siegfried again?
I just checked, and as of Soul Calibur 5, he is exactly 40.
Oh, okay.
So he's been around the block a bit more than Ike.
Man,
has.
he's Unk.
Literally.
Anyways.
All right.
But I don't think you should doubt Ike's skill, though. Even though he is younger than Siegfried, Ike, when he was raised by a very powerful and skilled knight, and he has been training with elite mercenaries ever since he was young. He is no slouch in skill. And by the time he was 17, he was pretty much leading the Grail mercenaries and fighting all sorts of bad guys. And these are not like pushovers either. These guys are experienced, seasoned veterans of war. And I can still fight on par with them and even defeat them. So he has a lot of skill, even though he doesn't have as much experience as Siegfried. He has a lot of skill to make up for that.
Was the leader who trained him like his father or anything? Because this could
might
just be
have been.
he could just be the leader due
Yeah.
to nepotism. Do we know this is via his own?
Oh my god,
merits?
I don't think Wayne would do that. Okay.
I'm
I don't
just
think-
throwing it out there. We have to consider all the
Oh, come on.
possibilities.
If it was nepotism, Ike would have died, all right? Because the
To-
people he are fighting, the people he is fighting do not hold back at all.
And to be
Alright.
fair, I think the first cutscene in Path of Radiance is literally Griel bonking Ike significantly in a sparring match. So I feel like he's got the tough love approach, it seems.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Alright. So Ike would definitely be skilled. Like, I think skill's probably gonna end up comparable unless either of y'all got some crazy like skill statement. But I think experience would be fair to give Siegfried no matter what.
Mm-hmm. I can agree with that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, both of them kind of whip their gigantic swords around.
So if we're talking
with-
about skill, in Soul Calibur, if you fall off the stage, it's over. But in Smash Bros, Ike has a recovery, so I think
Yeah,
that might give him a bit of an X factor in the fight.
Yeah,
if
he
we
has
think
an
about
up B. What is Siegfried gonna do when Ike uses his up B and launches him off the stage?
To be entirely fair, not much, because this man does not have any aerial stuff.
I assume Fire Emblem, as an actual home franchise, doesn't have much air combat. That's purely a platforming game translation.
It does have air combat, but it's mostly wyverns and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Some Pegasi.
and Pegasus is,
Hmm.
and you know,
So, is there any other factors to this fight besides just like who's faster and stronger, or?
There is also just the elements of their MacGuffin swords.
I guess I would.
And Soul Calibur Soul Calibur. I think you'd probably give them as the most recent stuff.
So, what weaponry is Siegfried bringing to the fight?
If you were to go based on Nightmare, it would be Soul Edge, but I think it's probably safe to kind of leave that as part of a separate character. So it does make more sense to go with what he eventually ended up getting, which is the sword Soul Calibur. That is essentially a piece of Soul Edge that had broken off and became its own thing. And it has a pretty solid laundry list of things that it gives you resistances to. There's like your like soul fuckery, mind fuckery. Astral Chaos in general is just a Molotov cocktail of crazy effects. Most people, when they go anywhere near an astral fissure, essentially become these obscenely powerful, insane versions of themselves that just want to go around killing things. And
Right.
a good chunk of the cast has actually been into astral fissures. Siegfried's probably one of the only ones who has been there for years during his time as Nightmare. His actual being was in astral chaos, and he managed to basically keep himself sane and slip free. So it speaks to a lot of resistances to any sorts of mind or soul fuckery or corruption, different things like that. Soul Calibur itself as well, it can kind of do a bit of sealing, but we haven't really seen it done on a person before, mostly just Soul Edge itself. So it's probably not something that I would argue he could do to Ragnell or anything like that.
So,
Well,
is it anything cooler than just like a really powerful, indestructible sword? Like, does it have like spells or anything he can cast? Or
There have been times where he's been able to essentially like create crystals with his swings and stuff like that with it.
Okay.
And there's like some fire effects too. It's mostly Soul Calibur 4 where he's actively wielding Soul Calibur. He kind of hands it off to someone in 5, and yeah.
Okay. So it's mostly he's mostly a sword fighter at the end of the day.
Yeah, almost entirely.
Okay, fair enough. Now, what's Ike bringing to the table? What's the deal with Ragnar? What's going on there?
Ragnar, could you bring up Unbreakable Ragnar? So, Ike's sword Ragnar is a sword that is literally unbreakable. You cannot break this sword. It doesn't matter how long you use it. It doesn't matter how much force you put on it. The sword will refuse to break. It has been blessed by the goddess, and it cannot be broken. So Ragnar's also pretty magical sword. Obviously, it deals damage to spirits and other entities.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Speaking of magic, could you pull up magic bypasses defense? So, right here, it's explained that spells will go right through a person's armor. I know that Ike is primarily a sword fighter, but he does have a few magic attacks.
Okay.
So Ike's magic can bypass armor. And could you bring up? There's a couple more I want you to bring up. Magic bypasses defense too. See, the thickest hide and the strongest armor. What this character is basically saying is that magic will just blast right through that. It does not matter how strong your armor is, because magic will pierce through it. It will bypass that defense.
I've only played a couple Fire Emblem games. Is this like a difference between like
No,
defense
I
and
think
resistance versus HP kind of thing, where it just
it's consistent across all the games. If you cast a spell at an armored enemy, usually that enemy is kind of screwed, because they cannot, unless they're right up in your face, the caster's pretty much always going to win. I remember because I played Three Houses recently, and Annette's fire magic melts through the armored troops. Like, it just devastates them.
So is it like I'm just trying? this is gonna be very important. So is it like it literally just ignores how strong you are and does damage, or is it like it's very good against heavily armored characters, but other characters are better at resisting magic attacks?
Could you bring up magic bypasses defense 3?
All right. Well,
And
with this statement, what argument is there to be had?
no, I'm not done yet. A magic bypasses defense 4. Yeah. I think if your armor is supernatural, I think maybe then it could maybe do something, but regular armor is not going to work very well against magical attacks.
We know Siegfried wears armor, so the fight might be over. He can't do it.
Well, as a counterpoint, one thing to bring up is that a lot of these statements are being taken from games outside of the Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn setting. It's likely that you could kind of apply how resistance and defense work to that series. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily like a durability bypass or anything, though, because each character inherently has both resistance and defense. It's just that people who focus on being armored tanks usually have low resistance but high defense, whereas the mages will have low defense, high resistance. So there still is a stat that is blocking the magic. So it then simply becomes down to if someone has resistance against magic attacks, similar to the kinds of resistances that Siegfried has shown against Soul Edge itself. So I think the argument that he wouldn't be able to defend against it at all is not quite accurate, given he's resisted plenty of magical attacks throughout his time, both as Nightmare and Siegfried.
This kind of feels like we're getting in the weeds, but does Soul Calibur ever try to make a difference between just like hitting you with a strong sword versus hitting you with like a magical fireball, or is it just kind of all just damage?
It's mostly damage. I'd say the most you could argue for it would be the fire that he uses in Soul Calibur 6, or the crystals that he uses when he's using Soul Calibur directly, which you could potentially make an argument that it's magical, but it's mostly like just physical.
I think there's like maybe some interesting nuance to go into here, whether like Ike's magic versus his sword would do more damage to Siegfried, but I think in general, unless they're like dead even in durability, if Siegfried's gonna be stronger, I don't think the magic's just gonna kind of get rid of that.
Well, I was just pointing that it would bypass his armor and hit him directly.
Right. So it doesn't matter whether Siegfried's got armor or if he's just butt naked. It's gonna hurt.
Oh no, the create a character system is being used.
Oh no.
No.
Actually, this is a fair point to bring up in regards to that, is that there are armor break mechanics in Soul Calibur, and characters can still take and shrug off attacks even after armor breaks. So even attacking him directly, he still has experience fighting where his armor is not at full capacity.
So his durability isn't fully dependent on his heavy armor, like maybe some units in Fire Emblem.
Okay.
So we were talking about Ragnell. Can it do anything besides be unbreakable? Or is it just a really cool sword?
It is a magic sword. It is unbreakable. If I could pull, it is a magic sword, so of course it can harm beings that are not harmed by normal weapons.
Okay.
And I don't know if Ragnell can do anything else.
Also, I'm sorry, I just kind of glossed over this because we were talking about the
Ragnell.
Oh, sorry, what?
Ragnell can also negate critical hits. That is something it could do.
Okay.
So
that could be cool. So you have to No weak
It brings down a
points.
critical hit from a critical to a normal hit. It's not like it takes a critical and fully does 0 damage.
Well, it could also increase Ike's defense.
I guess that kind of makes sense. Like, if I don't know if Siegfried would do this, but you can't really capitalize on any weaknesses with Ike, maybe.
Yeah.
What kind of magic does Ike have? Because you were saying he has magic. Like, can he throw fireballs? Can he summon lightning? Like, what's he got?
Magic. Ike has. Where is his magic? Oh, he does have this cool thing. Could you bring up?
For everyone
Nihil?
wondering what's happening, Kagura has sent me approximately 100 images, so he might have to look through to find where his specific point is.
Fair.
Yeah.
So which image would you like me to bring up?
Nihil.
Nihil.
Good old Nihil.
Yeah, Nihil. So, Ike has. This isn't really magic, but it might as well be.
All right.
Nihil is a skill that Ike has. And could you bring up Nihil 2? Nihil allows the user to prevent enemies from activating any of their skills. It's basically an anti skill move. So if this ability is activated, Siegfried won't be able to use any skills at all.
So what's the definition of a skill here? Is
I
that
guess
just
the definition of a skill would be, I guess, anything that's above his averaged attacks, like any.
I would say that in this context, it would probably be equivalent to saying that Siegfried can't spend meter, essentially.
Yeah.
In
but-
fighting game terms.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Man, that'd be broken in a fighting game.
Yeah, very well.
Yeah,
It's
honestly.
Nihil is not constantly active, correct? It only activates, I think. It's a somewhat low chance. I think it's like 10-15%.
Well, still, if it
absolutely.
activates, that puts Siegfried in a bad position because he has to now rely on his normal attacks rather than any of his special super moves.
Interesting. Okay.
Albeit it would only be temporary and wouldn't dismiss them for the rest of the fight or anything. Because an enemy that has Nihil used against them can still, on the next turn, attack and use them.
So I'm not a big Soul Calibur guy. How does meter work in Soul Calibur? Does it just kind of like...
You essentially build up a soul charge meter, and there's a couple different attacks that you can boost the damage, how many hits it does, various other factors by spending some soul charge meter. Then if you have it full, you can also usually do like a critical finish or like a critical edge where they're just your basic like level 3 supers. Then as well, you can go into general soul charge mode, which is where it kind of just does like inherent more damage, you're a bit faster. So there's a couple things that it would take care of temporarily. But it's by no means like it's not like disabling someone's B moves in Smash Bros. Where you're just gouging a good chunk of their kit. It's mostly taking off the bells and whistles. A lot of Soul Calibur combat is still fully centered on clubbing the hell out of each other with swords.
Okay.
It's still a useful skill to have.
Certainly, yeah.
So Ike has like some generic lower level spells, but he's mostly a swordsman. Siegfried is similarly mostly a swordsman. I guess that's kind of that. Do we want to talk about any other like abilities they have, or do we just want to? Is it time for stats?
Probably
might be
time for
time.
stats.
Might be time for stats, probably.
All right, it's time for stats. Stat.
Do you want to go first?
Sure, I can. So now, if you've watched the episodes of Death Battle that came out with Soul Calibur, you might think that the biggest feat that they've got is the busting of the Castle Ostrainsburg, where they completely screwed up a castle.
I can't screw up a castle, so that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, exactly. Still pretty good. However, there's been a lot of things discovered in the meantime since. The power of Soul Calibur characters has ramped up and up as people have searched for things. If you could bring up AP1.
AP1.
Now, the context of this is basically that someone is creating a false Soul Calibur and Soul Edge. And as you can see, he's basically doing all of this preparatory stuff. And he says that his prep is not enough, and it could destroy a country or two. However, that is boring. And the component that he is missing in this case are the actual Soul Edge and Soul Calibur. So him adding those in puts him above being able to destroy a country. Now, this actually has a lot of consistency in the scale that Soul Edge and Soul Calibur work on. If you could bring up AP2.
AP2.
Now, this is when Siegfried clashed with Nightmare, and both and Soul Edge was destroyed. The shockwave of destruction created when the swords clashed spread across the entire world. That is a pretty hefty feat to be able to send shockwaves around the entire planet. I believe it comes out to a couple teratons, if I recall. Yes, it was 7 teratons was what the feat came out to. But then we go even further. How strong is Soul Edge itself based on its feats? Now let's bring up AP3, because we've gone up from a castle to a country to affecting the whole planet. Now, this is a fight in Soul Calibur Legends where you fight inside of Astral Chaos, which is a realm that Soul Edge has made. There are several planets in Astral Chaos. Now, making all of these planets would end up being approximately star level, because there's you can go around the stage and there's several different planets. I think you can see 6 total. That would be about star level. And then for the last one, if you'd say, hey, now hold on a second, this sounds like an outlier, like planets and stuff like that for Soul Calibur characters, go to AP4. This one took some hunting, by the way. This is from a defunct mobile game. So there is an astronomer who is researching Soul Edge. And when he was looking into a recent event, he literally says 2 stars have fallen, implying that Soul Edge has actually managed to destroy stars. You could say that the 2 of them were created at separate time or destroyed at separate times, but ultimately we have consistency in the fact that Soul Edge operates on a fairly cosmic scale in terms of being able to create planets, destroy stars, make a cosmological space.
And Siegfried defeats Soul Edge?
Siegfried's struggle against Soul Edge is honestly one of the linchpins of the series. And also other characters have fought Inferno / Soul Edge and fought Nightmare. Just the scaling is all pretty well contained to each other.
Now, you've brought up a dangerous game, Sue, by bringing up mobile games into this conversation.
True.
Because Fire Emblem's mobile game scaling is a little infamous.
It is canon, though, is the big thing. And that's actually what makes it more annoying, is because if there's a mobile game that's non-canon, I can just go, sweet, ignore that, move on with my day. But the 2 mobile games that have come up are obnoxiously canon. In fact, one of them kind of leaves a plot point now that we can't access it, because it's very important to Soul Calibur 6's story.
With the mobile game itself is important to Soul Calibur 6's story?
Yeah, essentially...
Like Kingdom Hearts, you gotta play this completely separate side story to understand what's going on.
Kind of. So the context is that Soul Calibur 6 is in a separate timeline, kind of like a reboot. But one of the characters in Soul Calibur 6, Cassandra, she fights a alternate universe version of herself that emerges from astral chaos. Now, as I mentioned, when someone comes out of astral chaos after being there for any length of time, they're going to be crazy and powerful, right?
Mm.
There is one game called, I think, Unbreakable Souls, if I recall correctly, where the story is that Cassandra and a character named the Edge Master go into astral chaos to find, I believe it's Sophidia, which that's when stuff happened in 5. But either way, Cassandra and Edge Master go into astral chaos, and at the start of Cassandra's story in 6, that's when her other timeline self emerges. So it's kind of actually important to bridging the old timeline and the new one. But you just can't play it anymore. And that will be relevant as well later to some things that happen in both the new timeline and the old one. That things kind of do still scale together.
Okay. So
All right.
the general gist is star level is just kind of consistent narratively.
Yeah, star level's
Okay.
consistent narratively. You could argue Astral Chaos being a universe based on like all of the like cosmic background, but I wouldn't go that angle unless it was against like another like Starry Sky background argument. So
Okay, interesting. I'm just gonna bring that up real quick for my own purposes to see if I didn't actually look at the background. I was just looking at the planets. Are there stars? Oh yeah, there's a nebula.
yeah, there's like
Alright.
Nebula. There's a lot of cosmic shit going on back there.
All right. Shout out to Jaiska Play for providing the image.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a bit cut off, but thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So can Ike slice a star in half, Kagura?
Probably.
Oh, okay. Fair
So
enough. I
let's
guess
get
that's the end of that.
started with the AP feats. So, could you bring up Jeff the Land Shark?
What?
Jeff the land
Oh.
shark.
What the fuck?
Yes. Okay, so this is a calc from Flooding the Earth, which has been calculated to be a multi-continental attack, basically, or multi-continental energies.
Who
This,
flooded the earth?
I think this was Sophis,
Oh,
but
okay.
like we said, Fire Emblem's connected, but well, I'll explain to you that later. So,
No, I don't think it was Sothis. It
or
was
someone else.
Ashunera.
Oh,
Yeah.
Ashinera. Oh, yeah.
This one doesn't require
I'm
cross scaling.
confusing. I'm confusing both. There's two flooding Earths. All right.
Mhm.
Oh, this world gets. Is this the same world or
No,
different
different world.
worlds?
Different. Well, it's there's like two Earth floods. All right, in Fire Emblem, it gets
If I had
confusing.
a nickel for every time a goddess flooded the earth, I'd have 2 nickels. Not a lot. Weird it happened twice.
All
Yeah.
right.
So multi-continental
All right.
Now,
attack level.
if I may interject on this calc, because I have seen it used a fair bit. One thing that always kind of gets a little bit skirted around is time frame. A lot of the times people kind of assume that it took place in over the course of like a day or a few hours. The highest end that I've seen for this one has the most hilarious time frame because they went with the average amount of time that a woman cries for.
Do we have
Yeah.
that statistic?
I don't know if that one is prepared, but
Is it specifically women? Do women
What?
cry for different amounts of time than men? Is that
apparently yes. The person used that as a time frame. I don't think that's this end. This one is probably a more conservative one. But one thing that's worth bringing up is that this is a historical feat. This is something that happened long ago. There's legends about it, so
it's still-
time frame is a little tricky to determine.
It still happened. So I like the things I'm about to explain when we get further down the AP list are more insane than this.
Sure, yeah.
So we're just some Fire Emblem characters can flood the world. We're just kind of setting that as a baseline for power.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's next?
All right. For this next one, could you bring up Ike is above Marth?
Okay.
Sue has some thoughts on that.
The game begins.
Yes. So this is a scan that explains that, or at least if you don't think Ike is above Marth, at the very least, Ike is equal to Marth. So this scan explains that Ike is one of the greatest fighters ever seen. You could say that this is skill, but I think you could also scale this to AP.
So these
This
are just the
isn't,
reasons Ike might be the GOAT of protagonists, these statements.
yeah. This is important because Marth is equal to Naga.
Now, to
Uh, to,
confirm, this came from the which one? The Fates DLC, I believe, or Awakening DLC.
Awakening.
Okay.
Awakening.
It looks like it come
Could,
from Awakening and from Fates, based on some of these names I'm seeing.
could you bring up Marth equals Naga?
Marth equals Naga. Marth
So-
equals Naga?
Yeah.
I found it. Easily. Easily
This is
defeated.
this is Marth defeating Medeus, who is like the big bad of like his Fire Emblem game. This is important because Medeus has directly been comparable to Naga in power, and Marth defeating him is a feat that is very strong indeed. You could say that Marth got lucky, but I think you could still beat Medeus even without the sword.
I mean, apparently, according to Medeus, it was a low diff.
But also, according to Medeus, does this not mean that Marth was buffed by Naga's binding shields for the feat?
Well, you could still beat Medeus without the special items. I think you can do that.
That's fair.
Okay.
Yeah. Could you bring up Lilith?
Here's the fate scaling.
Yes. So Lilith is a character. If you zoom in, actually, you could see that it says that she uses her power of creating dimensions called star realms to aid Korin. That's Korin. I know it says Kamui, but that's just Japanese name. So
Now, do you happen to have a picture of one of these star realms on hand? Because not all dimensions are equal in size or scale.
I mean, I can testify. I remember playing this game. There is a starry sky in these realms.
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
there's a
I
starry
can
sky.
I can also vouch for that. But this feat is weird. It's really weird in terms of like if it actually applies. It's just like,
All right, but assuming it does apply, could you bring up multi-star? So this calculation right here uses the starry sky that we've seen in Fire Emblem Fates, and it comes down to multi-solar system level. That is way more than anything Siegfried has ever been capable of.
Not
So-
necessarily, but it also implies that Astral Chaos is itself not a same thing going on, but more for being a 360 view. So if anything, this feat would be less than the one that took place in Astral Chaos.
Wait, why is the
Alright,
Astral
but I
Chaos
see-
better?
Because this one is implying basically the stars that are above that you can see in a clear sky, which means that it's only what's above. The Astral Chaos one has a full 360, like a full sphere around it.
I don't know if
I
that
think that's
is,
a
like-
bit of a stretch to
I
say
don't know if
because we
that's-
can.
But either
turn
way,
things-
it would be even at worst.
That is fair. I will say this: we can see Nebula in the Astral Chaos one. I don't think there's ever any Nebula in the Fire Emblem one, so you could imply.
no, I don't
that.
remember there ever being one.
So I think you could imply that if we were to use like the stars as evidence for power, the Astral Chaos background seems more impressive. Potentially. I don't know. These feats seem like there might be some context behind both of them, but I don't know if we have the resources to fully delve into them.
And Starry Sky feats are always controversial, which is why I generally prefer to go with the planets that we can clearly see in the Astral Chaos one, as opposed to looking back there at the nebula and the stars.
Yeah.
But for all intents and purposes, I'm willing to say that either they're even or the nebula makes the Astral Chaos one a little bit better.
Okay. Kagra, I don't know if you know, but we can hear you drinking and chewing on that. So, is there anything better for Ike, or are we kind of settling on they're both at their highest ends?
I do have some other stuff, but I'll save that for later.
When there's no time for Sue to counter it. In the last 3 minutes.
Hey, 2 minutes is all I need.
Alright, so if we're settling on AP, I guess I assume the durability scales. I guess who's the faster sword fighter?
Oh boy, you activated my trap card. You've basically made the argument relying pretty heavily on shared multiverse scaling. In going for being equal to Ike, equal to Marth, who's equal to Medea, who's equal to Naga. Now, are you ready for the sheer madness? Bring up, if you could...
Oh, it's time for the funny scaling.
It's time for the funny scaling. Now, in Soul Calibur 4, there are bonus characters and guest characters, and they're... At the time, we didn't know what the real distinction was. Bonus characters were kind of uniquely made characters by guest manga artists and stuff like that. One of them was made by the artist who makes the Sergeant Frog series. This character was named Angol Fear. Now, this character wasn't actually in Sergeant Frog yet, but eventually she did show up. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, now, wait a second, these guest characters aren't canon, otherwise why wouldn't you just go Siegfried fought Kratos or Spawn? But in this case, there was in Soul Calibur Broken Destiny a relationship chart of basically all the goings-on between characters. If you could bring up Frog 1.
I'm going to throw up a bonus poll in the meantime, which is
absolutely
Ike with Smash Bros. Scaling versus Siegfried with guest character scaling.
Oh, God. We're not ready for that one. So, in this one, we can confirm that Angolfir and also Shura, actually, she was another one of the bonus characters, are still maintained in the relationship chart of Soul Calibur. This already cut out any, Star Wars characters, any of the other guest characters whatsoever. But it left the 5 bonus characters as being canon. Now, here's the thing, is that eventually, in Sergeant Frog, Angolfir did show up. And you kind of might be thinking, okay, well, Angolfir is in Soul Calibur, but it could be Lloyd Irving in Soul Calibur Legends, where, yes, they're story relevant and things like that, but they're not the same one as from their original home game. Now, if you could bring up Frog 2, the chapter wherein Angolfir first shows up, they specifically have a panel on the left-hand side showing Angolfir with both Soul Edge and Soul Calibur in the back, and story that specifically says that Angolfir has prior visited Earth. And it's basically saying that the events of Soul Calibur are completely canon to Sergeant Frog. So we have Soul Calibur acknowledging Angolfir as canon, and Sergeant Frog acknowledging Soul Calibur as canon. So I think it's pretty sound to take feats that the Fears are capable of. Which brings us to speed, and I have one feat that is both AP and speed, and one feat that is just speed. If you could bring up Frog 3. It's a video, actually, so we're gonna see.
I can't see it. It's a video.
Yeah, that's the big one.
意な一言で数知れぬ星々が犠牲になったことを彼女たちは知らない。
So, fears are very powerful. And that is a weaker fear than Angle Fear, who has a personal feat from the manga, if you could bring up Frog 4, where she crosses the distance between the Angle homeworld and Earth in 4 hours, because fears are only capable of being active and doing things for 4 hours at a time. Now, where is the Angle homeworld? At the center of our vast universe. That is a very MFTL feat. I've seen calcs for it get around 400 trillion times the speed of light. And Angle Fear has actively fought with a fair few characters. Yun Sung specifically, if I recall, was one of the ones who fought her, and she impressed him in combat, which is why he tried to abduct her for Soul Calibur 5. That's a whole weird thing, but either way, speed very handily goes there if you want to include crossover scaling. Otherwise, there's like a lot of like lightning feats and things like that. I believe the fastest one gets to 2% the speed of light, but the game has been opened up with the use of crossover stuff. Your move.
I mean, I wasn't really
I do
using
have a
crossover stuff.
question
I think
about
Fire
that.
Emblem games are all connected, but all
Well,
right.
they're I don't.
You've
No,
All
made,
right.
you
Right.
made a
Right,
fair case that Soul Calibur is canon to the Frog manga, but what was the
Yep.
justification for that working the other way, where the Frog manga is canon to the Soul Calibur?
That the Angle Fear is still in the relationship chart from Broken Destiny. So Angle Fear, like where they wipe away any of the canon characters between games, Angle Fear was still in the relationship chart of Soul Calibur afterwards the game that she's actually in. So
wait,
even without
what is Angle Fear's role in the franchise?
so basically she comes down and is judging Earth to see if it needs to be destroyed, like with the Armageddon thing that we saw in the video.
Yeah.
And so she comes down and judges its warriors and basically sees whether or not it's worth keeping around.
Was it worth keeping around?
Yeah, thankfully.
Alright, so does anyone scale to her? It kind of sounds like she showed up, was like, alright,
Well,
y'all are
yeah.
cool, then left.
As I said, Yun Sung does fight her, and he impresses her enough that she wants to actually keep him.
So is she like, I don't know if this was how jokey or serious this was, but we're here to answer the questions on this cast.
Yep.
Is it like, was she trying to judge him for like his combat capability, or was he just like, was this like a character test, or?
Now the personal keeping as a pet thing would definitely be combat. The judging to see if the planet needs to be blown up would probably be more like, are there people who are still morally good?
Okay. It seems potential that maybe someone scales to Angle Fear, but
I mean, if
I'm
it's- yeah,
sensing there
exactly.
could
Like, if
be an
they-
argument to be made that Angle Fear just scales above everyone else speed wise, but there's the possibility space for some speed scaling here potentially.
Yeah, I mean, if someone was trillions upon trillions of times faster than every other person around them, there wouldn't have even been a fight. It would have essentially been a statue.
Yeah, I suppose.
My take on it, from what I'm hearing, is like, given Yun's position in the series, like if Yun scales, I don't see why Siegfried wouldn't.
Yeah, exactly. Yun is pretty... I'll say he's a satellite character who never really interacts with Soul Edge. He's always kind of one step behind. And generally the characters that he's beating are the much lower tier villains and stuff like that.
Unfortunately, despite all your MFTL scaling, it would appear that Smash Bros. Ike defeats guest character Siegfried.
Yeah, because Smash Bros. Ike scales to Joker, who is 7D and immeasurable.
This was your chance for the SMT scaling, Kagura.
Yeah.
Alright,
I mean, I don't even have to. I don't even have to do the SMT stuff. I mean, I could if I wanted to, but...
Alright, so what what are we looking at for Ike with speed?
Okay, could you bring up Fire Emblem Lightspeed? This is just as a baseline. All magic in Fire Emblem is, like, the light magic, all magic is natural. 100% natural. It is natural light. So whenever you see a character cast a light magic spell, it is real light. And characters can dodge these attacks. So that's light speed right there.
Quick question regarding that. Is there a single light spell in pretty much the entire Fire Emblem series that meets the qualifications for light speed? Because I don't think a single spell in the series that doesn't either explode, twist and turn, or do many of the various other things disqualify light feats.
According to this scan right here, apparently it like gets rid of shadows.
Yeah, though things can illuminate something without being themselves the speed of light. Because if it's abandoning several of the qualifications that make up what is actually a light beam, then it has no reason to inherently apply the speed of light.
From the argument I'm seeing from this scan, there's also Micaiah, who has a light magic attack that is literally just like a blast of light that like refracts and like from shadows, and like that light itself is what is the omnidirectional attack.
Yeah.
But if it's omnidirectional, how are people dodging it, and what's the tandem motion?
All right.
Cogrid, what is your
There's
defend yourself?
defend myself. Yes. Okay. I don't see how you could argue that this is not real light, because yes, the light magic in Fire Emblem is pretty inconsistent. I will admit that, but it has been stated numerous times that magic in Fire Emblem shares a lot of natural properties with real life material. Because if it's fire magic, it is real fire. It behaves like real fire. If it's lightning magic, it behaves like real lightning. We have cloud to ground lightning spells in Fire Emblem. It's wind. It is real wind. This is a consistent statement. Like, meteor spells are not just, oh, they're creating a little meteor. No, there is a specific statement that they are pulling meteors from outer space and chucking that at people.
In one of the instruction bullets, if I recall.
Yeah.
This is off topic, but that's my least favorite justification for a meteor spell, because no writer actually thinks about what that means.
No.
Because there's not just like meteors in the atmosphere. If that was
just waiting
literal, it
to
means
dinosaur the
it
shit
from,
out
like,
of us.
the asteroid belt, which as I that's one of the things as a power skiller that I like have to sit back and wonder, like, should we really be considering this as like a speed feat?
Yeah, like
Man.
pulling them from outer space, like on its face, is just like so big. Like, where in outer space?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I think Madara from Naruto is like a similar statement that no one takes seriously, which is that he just like pulls the meteors from space instead of creating them. But no one uses that because no one wants like MFTL Madara for that reason.
Okay.
But anyway, is Fire Emblem Lightspeed? That's the topic we're on right now.
So I would say that even
there's also the novel. I couldn't find it. I really tried my best to find this, but there is a novel statement where Lyn attacks at the speed of light. I tried my best to find this novel. It's from one of the FE7 novels.
I can't remember seeing anything for it,
but it does exist. I know it does exist because I've seen it, and there's plenty of people who've seen it before in the Fire Emblem matchup thread. But yeah, to counter the Sergeant Frog thing, so in Fire Emblem Heroes, there is this thing called...
There's this thing you say.
Yeah, there's this thing called the Dream World.
Oh, word.
So, I'm trying to find it. Give me a second, because I have a lot of shit to go through.
Wagon,
No
how are you
worries.
feeling about the speed scaling so far? Because it sounds like, to me, if they both have kind of lightning upscaling and, like, light downscaling, even if the light isn't necessarily legitimate, if there's significant upscaling from the lightning, it kind of sounds like, at the low ends for Soul Calibur, they might be similar so far.
Yeah, at the low ends when you
Yeah.
don't use like all the crazy cross scaling stuff. Once the cross scaling gets introduced, you start having
Yeah,
stuff.
from everything I've been seeing so far, like I'm gonna give my like final verdict when we actually get to that, but like from the sounds of it so far, Soul Cal like light timing stuff seems a bit stronger, but that's also from me who's like a lot more like well versed in like the Fire Emblem side of the numbers.
All right. So, in Fire Emblem Heroes, there's this character who is the main inhabitant of the realm outside the flow of time and can navigate forwards and backwards in time. Another character, I can't pronounce this name, but their light is considered to function the same way as that character's time, and every character can react to it.
What does
So
that even
this-
mean? Flows the same way as the character's time.
That there's also like characters that can travel through in multiple infinities, like multiple infinite.
Do you happen to have
verses.
scans of that?
Uh,
Because
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of things regarding Fire Emblem Heroes that people bring up and kind of don't get questioned on. They just kind of go
Okay.
like,
All right. I'll
No,
show
no.
you. Scan.
I'm just saying that I would prefer to see some of the actual like evidence of these characters doing these things. And then we're gonna have to, we have to have the discussion as to whether or not Heroes is viable or not, because it has clearly alternate universe versions of characters. It has a very tenuous connection to the actual games that the characters are from.
I'd say you could use Heroes, but
I think it'd be equivalent to using something like Project X Zone for Fire Emblem and hilariously Soul Calibur characters.
to be honest, I think you can use Fire Emblem Heroes, but we'll get to that debate when we get to it.
Yeah.
For now, could you pull up Your Powers Are Mine 1? I've been playing too much Marvel Rivals.
Oh boy.
So this is the character Loki.
Okay.
Who is
All right.
I'm doing it solely to counter the Sergeant Frog thing.
Okay.
So there are
I don't quite. Oh, I don't know if those are equivalent, but fair. Go ahead.
or not.
Yeah.
Well,
there is
let's
an
hear him out. Let's see what he has to say.
All right, there is an infinite number of worlds in Fire Emblem Heroes, and the world has an infinite amount of worlds within it.
So this is
And-
contrasting the previous statement. Like, there's an infinite amount of worlds, but this world is
Worlds-
special because it itself contains a number of infinite worlds.
Yes.
So we got two infinities right now.
Isn't that basically? Isn't the context of that essentially that she's saying that the one world is attracting the other worlds to it, less so than saying that it is an infinite universe within an infinite universe?
Well, either way, it's an infinite amount of universes and infinite amount of universes. Like, if you're attracting more universes to it, that's just infinite, right?
It depends on, because essentially that would mean that it's going by possibility more than actual cosmology directly. But I'll let you keep going with your points, and we'll kind of hit more of it afterwards.
This is a little off topic, but someone in the chat was wondering why you never brought up Ether.
Oh, why I never brought up Ether?
Is Ether important?
I mean, I can bring it up now. I might as well.
Is it like a cool ability, or is it for scaling purposes?
It's an ability. It's
So what does ether do? Just to get that out of the way.
Ether. Hold on. Let me check. Ether is a skill that deals 2 consecutive hits. In Heroes, it treats the foe's defense and resistance as if it's reduced by 50%.
So it's more of the Ike is able to kind of ignore your defenses kind of stuff.
At least reduces them.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. So I didn't mean to interrupt you. Just someone in the chat was asking about it, so I was wondering if that was like gave him like special abilities or anything.
I mean, it's a cool looking animation when he uses it.
It's definitely cool looking. We cannot deny that.
Yeah.
All right.
If you use it in Smash Bros, it's like a huge fiery explosion.
Is it a big fiery explosion in canon?
Not really. It kind of just whacks the person with a sword. It's his like his front flip attack, his up B. That's ether.
The Radiant Dawn version, according to the chat, apparently reduces the defense by 100%.
Oh. Yeah. It does.
Calibur approves of that fact. Alright. I didn't mean to get us too off topic. I just wanted to make sure we didn't like just forget about it, get lost in the sauce of numbers. So we're dealing with a potentially infinite amount of worlds within a world amongst the infinite worlds.
Okay. Yeah. I will say. Oh yeah, I nearly forgot to send this. What?
Are you sending me more stuff to put on screen?
Yeah.
Alright.
Yeah, I'm sending you more stuff.
Alright.
This is just to back up the infinite stuff.
Supplementary infinite. Alright, so the feat that we're potentially trying to support is that someone can travel throughout all of the infinite worlds and would thus get infinite speed. Is that what we're trying to figure out?
Well, yeah, they could also move through time like it's nothing, or
they can time travel.
Oh yeah, in Fire Emblem Heroes they can.
Via speed or via magic?
It's an ability essentially, so I don't know about scaling that to their speed, and then traveling through quote unquote infinite worlds doesn't necessarily mean traveling through all of it at once or all of it at all. So I also don't know about actually using that for.
Do you want me to bring it up right now? I think I'm gonna say perhaps you've run out of time to gather more information.
Okay, all right, sure. You can bring up this one. You can bring up this one then.
All right,
that's fine.
There's no timeouts in the fan battle cast.
Yeah, my bad. I thought I was prepared, but I was not prepared enough of it. You know.
All right.
Yeah. So this once again is to back up the infinite speed thing.
Wait a second. It says this realm is outside of time, but then she later says, I'm able to reverse time's flow.
Yeah.
That's... How can you reverse time if there is no time?
Well... Hold on, let me see the explanation.
Is she like... Is the logic that because there's no, like, time... she can create her own time to reverse?
All right, so the order of heroes that traverse across a seer's snare, which is a world outside time itself where time flows from the past and future with the objective to reach the light. This is known as the realm edge and escape. So...
I'm still having a bit of trouble seeing how this applies to speed, because one of the big things that's going on is that it's kind of one of those, well, place time doesn't exist as a free pass to infinite speed. And I don't necessarily agree with those arguments, because then you get like Pokemon Mystery Dungeon where the people in Grovile's future are suddenly infinite speed because they existed where time didn't move. It's kind of one of those things where you take a narrative thing into a statistical direction that I don't necessarily think it actually implies.
Well, there are other immeasurable things I could have brought up, but I ran out of time.
Ah.
All right, so
Are they all from Heroes?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah, figured.
and we'll also kind of get into a brief moment of talking about both Engage and Heroes kind of as a lump sum, because I don't necessarily think that they scale back to their original game's characters.
it seems like now's a good time to talk about it as any.
Yeah, I figured.
Yeah.
So Engage, the characters are essentially spirits that are emulating the things that the other game characters did. They are not actually those specific characters. So I think that is a bit of a tricky one to do backscaling.
I think the fact that Veronica appearing in Fire Emblem Engaged proves that Heroes is a part of the wider Fire Emblem universe.
Actually, I was gonna go ahead and say, Engage scaling is kind of a moot point because Ike is the one everyone scales to.
I mean,
honestly, fair point. Yep. The
So it's all a question of Heroes.
Okay, so then Heroes, one big thing is that all of the characters that are summoned, not only are you summoning multiples of characters, but also clearly alternate universe ones. They take there's so many inconsistencies with some of the characters. Like, for example, Edelgard. Is she absolutely fine with just assisting, actually, no, that's an Engage problem. More than a Heroes one. But there's a lot of times where characters will essentially either know things that they shouldn't know given their appearance, whether it's like a prior point in time or later. And then also there are just blatantly alternate universe ones, like ones where Fire Emblem Awakening characters are celebrating literal Catholic Christmas. So I think there is a fair bit of all of the characters involved are alternate universe. And if you're trying to find the line between what's the alt one and what's a real one, I think that kind of blurs the line to the point where they're kind of just all alt.
So you're kind of saying it's like a Xenoverse Heroes kind of thing, where it's like...
Exactly. Heroes is basically
like
a Xenoverse
the story
situation.
of Xenoverse would make you believe you're just going to the main universe, but based on the scaling, that doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah.
Basically,
But
TLDR, if you're not original to Heroes, why bother?
Yeah,
But
if
to
it was
be
with the
honest-
original, if it was the original main protagonists, then sure, I could definitely see the argument for some of the higher scaling. Albeit, I wouldn't necessarily say that there's the crazy multiverse stuff, because nobody has actually destroyed the Tempest that's doing all of the multiverse shenanigans anyway. They just beat what it spits out and it goes okay, and backs off for a while. I wouldn't necessarily say people scale to all of the multiverse stuff inherently.
Okay.
I mean, I you could say that, but it's the problem is Veronica shows up in Fire Emblem Engage.
Yeah, but she doesn't scale to that stuff anyway, and it could still be an alternate universe version of her.
I mean, for the love of God, Engage Veronica has her later design, but her original personality.
That's exactly what I was
justifying
referring to.
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then Edelgard in Engage is totally fine with working for another dragon pope that is definitely against character for her.
So I am the outsider. My role is to ask the questions that someone who doesn't know what's going on would ask.
Yes.
So what I've been able to kind of gather from the context is Veronica is a character from Heroes, and her presence in Engage is the argument that people in Engage, including Ike, would scale to stuff in Heroes?
That is the argument, yes.
But it also kind of runs afoul of the fact that the emblems in Engage are not the actual characters themselves. They're spirits emulating the characters. So statistically speaking, you wouldn't even necessarily scale them because those spirits are separate entities from the characters that they're emulating. It doesn't just inherently make someone as powerful as what they're emulating.
I mean, I'm personally fine with engaged scaling, barring Veronica, given her weird outlier bullshit.
Yeah.
But like, it doesn't really matter again in this case, since we're specifically looking at Ike, who is again the big one that
The big
everyone
one.
would scale to through engage anyway.
Everybody wants that spicy flood feet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So 3G in the chat is going to bat hard for Ike with some scaling justifications. They're saying that Fire Emblem 1 gives more validity to the scaling because in the Fire Emblem 1 re-release, apparently it's directly called being pulled away in a guidebook. So apparently Fire Emblem 1 is canon to Heroes. And also apparently Azura from Fates has a multi-plus feat.
What
Okay,
re-release?
which re-release? Are you talking about Shadow Dragon, or are you talking about the one that died with Mario?
Mario?
Yeah, what?
You know the one.
Fire Emblem 1 re-release with Shadow Dragon, that came out way, like 10 years before Heroes? I don't know about that one.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
So does Ike have any good scaling beyond Heroes and Engage scaling?
He is the scaling.
Yeah, so without Heroes, the highest that you end up getting is basically like
The
multi-continent and multi-solar system stuff if you go through...
if you use the fucking Starry Realm scaling from Fates.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just saw a confirmation in the chat. The one that was on Switch, the fucking anniversary one that died with the Mario collection.
Oh. Yeah, I didn't
So
know
my
that
question is, who actually bought that knowing that it was going to go away? Like,
and wait, a guidebook?
Like, I did not... I have not seen a single person bring up like, in all my days, bring up anything regarding that re-release in a versus sense. So if there's anything new from there, it's a mystery to me.
Nobody's seen it. It's a mystery of the Emblem, I guess you could say.
We gotta get Nintendo to re-release it again.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Wagon, I super appreciate your expertise.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's starting to feel like we're ganging up on Kagura a little bit here.
I'm trying my best.
All right.
It is just
my best to keep things honest.
And it is just kind of the general climate of a lot of Fire Emblem scaling discussions. Inevitably, all roads will eventually lead to Heroes. It's just the power creep of the situation.
Do we have anything else we want to go over, or have we kind of covered all the big topics?
I think we've hit most of my main points. A lot of the Siegfried stuff outside of specifically the Sergeant Frog scaling is pretty straightforward.
I personally don't think the Sergeant Frog scaling should be counted.
What's your counter to it specifically?
What's my counter to it? Is a crossover.
but it's one that's canon, acknowledged by both series, outside of the original crossover point. I think that's a huge factor in. I think it's really tricky to say that the Sergeant Frog scaling shouldn't count, but Engage scaling does. I think that.
Well, Engage is like the same franchise, though.
Yeah, but it's not acknowledged past like in any of the prior games of it being a thing that happens. Like, and it's also not the original characters, but I would say that Sergeant Frog scaling is more firm than pretty much either Engage or Hero scaling, just by virtue of the fact that both series after Soul Calibur 4 have both acknowledged that it's still canon.
I will say this isn't really objective, but it sounds like it's a lot more fun if we stick to like just
the actual
the scaling from
themselves.
Soul Calibur and the scaling from various Fire Emblem games that aren't Engage or Heroes.
Yeah, I can agree with that. It's more fun that way at the very least, and it makes it still be.
It seems like it's really close if we do it that way.
Yeah, if it's that way.
I
then-
wouldn't necessarily say so, because then speed kind of becomes similar, but power is still all of the planets in astral chaos and stuff like that.
Well, if we argue
like,
that
yeah,
the Lilith
but-
stuff is valid.
But then we have
Yeah.
the starry skies with nebulas versus starry skies no nebulas. So either way, Siegfried's going to come out a lot shinier in regards to power.
Alright.
Alright. So I guess I'll throw the poll up and we'll go with our final arguments.
Yep.
Which one wants to do the final argument first?
Feel free, you can do so.
Universe is one.
Wait, I'm making the poll right now. I'll get to that in a hot second.
Oh, brother.
This is not a Fire Emblem Heroes thing.
Then what's it gonna be, Kagura?
Universe.
Oh Christ!
Uh-oh.
Let's
Where's
hear
this
him out.
going?
Let's hear him out.
Okay. Universe is two.
You're not even gonna explain it. You're just gonna have us read it on screen and move on.
Oh no,
Yeah,
no,
'cause
it'll
I-
probably be at the very end of it. It all comes together into one thing.
When we pass
And-
through this chasm in space and time,
And then Universe is three.
we had no
And
place
then,
to go. Not on
Ending
this
it
world.
off with Ike Drip.
Damn.
Okay. Wait.
You know what?
what?
I think that's the strongest
pretty funny.
argument.
we just.
That's the strongest argument you've had.
What was the point of the universe to scan? That was just a statement that they went from one universe to another.
Yeah.
You
And
have-
that was Fire Emblem
I've
7.
seen your scans. You have like outerversal arguments. Why aren't you bringing any of them up?
Because okay, fine. Ike 1, Ike 2, and Ike 3. Let's go.
All right.
Oh, brother.
And then we can get into Ashira concepts, and then Ashira is an entity.
All right. So this is like one. Someone's gonna destroy the world.
Yeah,
Mhm.
planet level.
And then, I'm gonna bring up the scans, but can you explain the scans as you bring them
Yeah,
up?
sure.
All right. So this is like 2.
Ashira is let's say Ashira is a goddess. First of all, she is the goddess that is killed at the end of the game. And there is an argument that she is a conceptual being. If you bring up Ashira, if Ashira had been, this is basically just a character saying that Ashira could
There's
unmake
Ashira
them.
concepts. Ashira destroys the world, and Ashira
Uh,
is an entity.
Ashira is an entity. And then Ashira concepts.
And didn't I just see them basically acknowledging the fact that if she was awakened in that stronger form, she would have immediately killed them all?
I didn't bring it up. So yeah.
Okay, but how much of this
Sure.
is just like flowery language?
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
what it's, like what a god represents doesn't necessarily mean that they are those concepts themselves.
This is if you take it like 100% leniency, 100% literal, this would be like outerversal.
I mean,
If you
if you do the same thing with Soul Edge, there are so many times in Soul Calibur where characters refer to Soul Edge as being like the epitome of destruction and evil. So you could make the exact same argument for Soul Edge.
Right. All right.
All right then. Is that? Do you have anything more to say for yourself, Kagura?
Ike versus Siegfried.
Oh, Ike versus Siegfried.
So true.
Ike versus Siegfried.
Boom, I win.
You got
My
Siegfried
question
there,
is-
accurate.
What am I looking at?
My low effort drawing because I didn't have enough time to put in more effort into this, unfortunately.
If this is a scan, then I guess what happens when Ike fights Siegfried is Siegfried dies.
Yeah.
And Ike uses a kitchen knife for some reason.
Yes,
That's true.
he has the Kara knife.
and a chef hat. It kind of just
He has a chef hat. Yeah,
a chef hat and a chef's knife.
yeah. He's a chef. I
I
can cook.
question the source of this feat.
The source is that it is most likely definitely true.
Okay.
Most likely and definitely true. Those
Yes.
two, both of those at the same time.
It is both at the same time. Do not
Alright.
question me.
All right, Sue. Why do you think Siegfried's gonna win?
All right, so I think that a lot of the scaling arguments kind of come down to the fact that not only has Soul Calibur itself operates on a larger scale of power, just with the aspect of Astral Chaos itself, with all of the things that it has done, backed up by other feats, such as the Astronomer declaring that 2 stars had been destroyed, or rather had fallen, but I think we know what that means in this case. You have quite a few things on that cosmological level. Well, if you just look at the Radiant Dawn and Path of Radiance games, they're really kind of capping out at like multi-continent level, and that's assuming that you don't have any sort of time frame for the flood happening itself, which is a historical feat, took place a long time ago. It could have taken place over years, and that would change the level of power that the feat takes. And then once you start to bring in other factors, because also as well, the Starry Sky feat that's being used for Fire Emblem, that's only relevant through Engage anyway. If you're actually just looking at Path of Radiance, Radiant Dawn, that flood's all you got, really. Because it basically does start relying on cross-scaling, at which point the far more, I would say, reasonable argument for the Sergeant Frog being canon, as opposed to the other sources that come in, like Heroes and Engage. At that point, you start to kind of get in the weeds of the flowery text that is being used in Heroes and all the nebulous scaling aspects that happen in Engage because of the fact that it's not actually those characters, so likely would not come back to them. I just think that it is a lot more of a concrete argument and requires significantly less backflips in order to say that Siegfried kind of just AP stomps. I think that the multi-cont end versus the stars and stuff the planets that are in Astral Chaos kind of ends up being like several trillions of times difference in power, at which point, even with like a ton of different aspects, he's not really going to be able to put Siegfried down, because Ether ignores defense, but it doesn't ignore health. So you couldn't say that it would just one-shot Siegfried right then and there. And yeah, I really don't necessarily see an argument for Ike taking it, as long as you're using the same standards for both.
I think I have one last question before I give my verdict.
Yeah.
Which was, if I bought them having really similar stats, and like let's just say stats were equal, who has the better argument for winning if stats are equal?
If they were 100% equal, I would probably say Ike, just through like Nihil and Ether.
Ether and Nihil would definitely.
I would
be useful.
probably say that would be the case, but that's just in an equal stat scenario.
Okay.
Siegfried is generally a bit more of a flying brick.
Flying.
Oh yeah,
flying.
like,
He can't fly. Wait, he can't
Oh.
fly. There's no way he can fly.
Surprise, motherfuckers! He has an up B now.
Can Siegfried fly?
Siegfried
No,
can't
he
fly.
can't
Oh,
fly.
okay.
Oh
'Cause
wait, can he?
No,
If he can
No,
fly,
he
that's
can't
a
fly.
huge advantage in this fight.
He
I
can't
was-
fly.
I was pondering one of the aspects of Astral Chaos. So there's some fights there that have taken place in questionable flooring. Some characters can fly, he can't.
All right, fair. All right, I'm in the top left, so I give my verdict first. If we were to buy their higher ends, the Lilith feat, from what was presented to me, makes sense. I don't think a good reason why it's not legit was presented besides it just being a little weird. So if we were to compare that directly to the Astral Chaos, it's possible the Astral Chaos is stronger because of the nebula, but it's also possible that the dimension thing Lilith made was actually just like a whole It's hard for me to figure out which of those feats seem more impressive to me, so I kind of want to just equal them out. I think Siegfried is faster. I don't know really how fast Fire Emblem gets besides probably similar ranges, but Siegfried probably has more concrete, closer, better relativistic scaling, so he's probably faster.
Well, there is the Makea Lake calc, but I didn't bring it out. I will admit, I'll admit it later, but when verdicts are done.
It's too late for that.
It's kind of seeming to me like Siegfried just has the better arguments for... They're either equal or Siegfried's stronger. They're either equal in speed or Siegfried's faster. Ike might be able to finagle something with stats if they're similar enough. And he might be more skilled, but Siegfried's more experienced. It seems like it's genuinely an interesting close debate, but it seems like Siegfried's just the more honest answer for who's gonna win. So I vote for Siegfried. Alright, Wagon, what are you thinking?
Siegfried.
Alright
Yeah.
then. No
Like, here's the thing.
justification.
No, yeah. There's definitely like interesting aspects to it, like on Ike's side, like Nile basically equating to no spending meter, Aether kind of being Durnegg. You can argue better mobility through like Aether even, but ultimately it just comes down to Siegfried just running away with stats. Like there's like the fending off planets and like destroying star stuff in Soul Calibur is much more impressive than anything directly in Tellius, with where the best is probably that we know of, probably the Ashenera's Flood. If you were to argue the Starry Sky thing with Lilith, the Astral Chaos is either equal or more impressive. And as far as speed goes, I feel that Soul Calibur has a stronger argument for FTL speed than Fire Emblem, given that the best that I have heard, and I saw this mentioned in the chat, there is a calc from FE3 for dodging basically a laser attack that comes out to like 40%-ish. And I feel like there's just stronger arguments for Soul Calibur to get higher than that. If you were to bring in other scaling, I don't think Heroes is reliable, and Engage is, again, a moot point because Ike is the big scaling anchor on that front.
Yeah.
Whereas I think that the Sergeant Frog scaling is more solid than people would probably give it credit for on the face. So at that point,
it's so stupid.
the stat gap just gets insanely wider. So to that point, it just becomes like no contest, to the point where like Siegfried just takes it all home.
Ending the poll now in chat.
I do think like if it were an equal stat scenario, it would be more interesting, but that's just not what the majority of this was predicated on.
I can 100% agree with that. If it was equal stats, I definitely think Ike would probably come away with it, because it kind of comes down to Siegfried would only really take experience, whereas Ike would have a lot more other factors coming in with and while they're random in when they activate and when they don't, it's still better than, to be fair, what Siegfried has in a couple momentary buffs and
Well, it might have been a Siegfried sweep on the jury's end, but Ike in the poll has run away with the victory at like nearly 75% of the vote. So we've got Ike's got some shooters. We can't hold that against him. He's got
he's
got his support.
Yeah, it's just that okay, so now that verdicts are done, I do think that um this debate would become interesting if you just limit it to just Fire Emblem and Soul Calibur. The thing that caught me off guard was the Sergeant Frog scaling.
Someone's
I
saying
was not
that
prepared for that, so that
someone
was
in the
completely
chat is
on me.
saying that giving him frog scaling but not giving heroes is a bit odd. Number one, I disagree with that
Yeah.
because it seems like the frog scaling is just more part of the lore, whereas
Yeah.
heroes isn't. But also,
Yeah,
even if you
Heroes isn't
didn't
a
give
lot
the
weirder
frog
of a
scaling
situation.
feat, it seems like Siegfried still takes stats, just he's not blitzing by like 1,000 times or whatever.
Yeah, the Sergeant Frog scaling is mostly for the speed.
It just
Hell,
becomes a
if
comfortable gap instead of like an absurdly large gap.
yeah, I'm sure if you calculated the feat of the like multi Armageddon that Angel Moi did there, you'd probably get some pretty bonkers stuff too. But I mostly just use it for the speed because that one
Yeah.
feat that Angol Fear personally has. I think that's just a more reasonable angle to take it. While Heroes is
Angle
pretty
to take.
controversial in its contradictory nature and its actual scaling back to the games.
Yeah, Heroes has the Dissidia problem.
You triggered my PTSD.
If
Yeah.
we count the earlier poll
I'm not wrong, though.
where Persona scaling Ike beats God of War and Spawn scaling Siegfried, then that technically ties this whole thing up to 2-2.
Yeah,
Oh,
it is accurate because I'm sorry, Persona's just too busted. Doesn't matter. Siegfried is getting destroyed by Smash Bros. Ike.
Okay, but is Persona written by Todd McFarlane? I didn't think so.
Counterpoint
Actually, wait up. Todd McFarlane made Persona toys. I am not joking.
Actually, that's pretty neat.
No,
Also,
shit.
a counter argument: Smash Bros. Ike against a guest character Siegfried. Link is a guest character in Soul Calibur 2, so he gets Smash Bros. Scaling. Joker scaling. We're fucking done, boys.
Oh, it's just
we
equal
know
stats.
it's
Equal stats.
Siegfried.
There
It's
you
just
go.
equal stats,
Which Ike
then.
wins,
Ike still
determined.
wins.
Oh,
Ike
you're
still
right.
wins.
Damn.
You played yourself.
All right.
Hoisted by my own petard.
With that was a nice simple cast after all the wild shit we've been doing the past couple of casts.
Yeah.
Yeah, simple. Sergeant Frog scaling.
Hey, by our
And
standards,
Heroes.
that's pretty damn simple. I'm not gonna lie.
You know what? True. You know, fair enough. Fair enough. Given the kind of bullshit that's been going on, like with some of these debates, no, yeah.
I mean,
this is
I
pain.
could have brought in Megami Tensei scaling.
There
from
was
Tokyo
no
Mirage
cosmology
Session.
scaling to be had. There
I
was
could have.
universe
I
scaling,
didn't.
but not cosmology scaling.
I didn't.
All right. With all that said, thanks everyone for watching. This has been a great cast, and